One-time medical examiner from Suffolk County, New York.
Let me tell you about the doubts that were raised in my mind. The most pressing thing in the whole report was the lack of finding of barbiturates in the stomach.
As an expert, what does it tell you that there was no residue in her stomach?
It tells me that the barbiturates that were analyzed in the liver and blood had to enter her body in some other manner. Now, what other manner could they possibly have entered? One would be by injection.
The autopsy was performed by Dr. Thomas Noguchi, one of the top forensic pathologists in the country, a real-life Quincy. Also present was John Miner, the district attorney's liaison with the medical examiner's office at the time of Marilyn's death.
Her body was examined minutely by both of us under magnification to see if we could find any needle mark of any kind anywhere on her body. And her entire body was observed, and there were no needle marks.
Dr. Warren Lovell, the medical examiner in Ventura County, California, believes Noguchi's autopsy is unimpeachable. But Dr. Lovell can't discount the possibility of an injection.
Could you concoct a lethal mixture, inject it into the body, and not have a coroner be able to spot a needle point entry?
Yeah, it's possible.
It's possible.
Remember, no traces of barbiturates were found in Marilyn Monroe's stomach. The mystery of the missing capsule residue may have been solved if a simple request by Dr. Noguchi had been carried out. He sent out other body organs to be tested for traces of drugs. The tissue mysteriously disappeared.
He took those various tissue samples from all parts of the body, the various organs, and he set them aside for those tests
That is
that
correct.
he thought were needed. And at some point thereafter, people realized that those tests were not conducted. Is that correct? And not only were they not conducted, but the material upon which they could have been conducted had disappeared.
That's my understanding, sir.
Now, what did you read into that, if anything?
I don't know.
Is it a curious event? Does it happen often?
It should not happen.
And it certainly should not have happened in a case with such a high profile as the death of Marilyn Monroe. Am I correct about that?
I would say you are, sir.
Without those test results, Noguchi had no alternative. His conclusion, death by barbiturate overdose, a probable suicide.
Can I say with any validity or certainty that perhaps the barbiturate content found in the bloodstream and liver, etc., was really the result of a whole other form of injection, suppository, whatever, into the body?
That is possible in this sense, that there was evidence of, or there wasn't evidence, there was purple discoloration
In the
and
colon.
congestion of the lower colon.
Now, what would that tell you, if anything?
Well, that is not something that ordinarily should be there, and it does indicate the possibility that an irritant substance
Was administered.
was administered.
Is there the possibility that she may have been murdered, that this was all the result of foul play, premeditated, whatever?
That's a possibility. From the information I had, it seemed to me a logical conclusion that she did not commit suicide.
John Miner wrote a report on the death of Marilyn Monroe expressing his doubts as to the suicide.
Do you happen to have a copy of that report that you sent out?
Apparently, all copies of that report have disappeared.
Does anyone have a copy of it?
There should be a copy in the district attorney's files. There should be a copy in the coroner chief medical examiner's files.
Has anyone made a search of those files?
Apparently.
And what was the result of that search?
I've been told that there is no such copy.
John Miner has first-hand knowledge about Marilyn Monroe's death. In a private conversation with Dr. Ralph Greenson, Marilyn's psychiatrist, Miner says he heard a tape recording that shed light on how she died.
I had a conversation with him. I listened to some tape materials that he played during the interview. He exacted from me a promise that whatever opinion I reached, which was the same as his, that she did not deliberately commit suicide, but that the content of our conversation would not be revealed. I made that promise, and I've kept it, and I will continue to keep it.
Dr. Greenson took the secret of Marilyn's death to his grave. In a tape phone conversation, he spoke of the terrible burden he carried.
I can't explain myself or defend myself without revealing things that I don't want to reveal. I feel like I can't, you can't go around and say, well, I'll tell you this and I won't tell you that. It's a terrible position to be in, to have to say I can't talk about it because I can't tell the whole story.
But he did give one tantalizing clue.
Listen. Yeah. Close to Bobby Kennedy?
Bobby Kennedy, of course, was only one of the many powerful and famous men with whom Marilyn had become entangled. Being close to the powerful has its rewards. It also has its perils.
We now know for the first time that Marilyn Monroe and her contacts were perceived as a real security risk. And they were perceived as a security risk in those crucial weeks right before her death.
She wrote down everything. It was probably disastrous.
Well, she had the capability of bugging people up till the time she died.
And now that I have your attention, I want to warn all you girls and women of New York about an evil, dangerous, perfectly dreadful married man.
If Marilyn Monroe didn't commit suicide, as some believe, then what on earth would be the motive for foul play? The truth is that Marilyn loved to immerse herself in a circle of rich and famous men. Men who, by the very nature of their business, surrounded themselves in intrigue. There was mobster Sam Giancana at a time when gang war was raging in Chicago. There was President John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy at a time when World War III threatened over the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, believe me, Marilyn was no dumb blonde. She liked playing with fire, and she also liked walking on the razor's edge. And after her death, her friends and contacts, all intriguing people, would have made a dramatic and telling landscape for any grand jury. The woman with me is Jeannie Carmen, Marilyn's friend for 12 years. She has memories of those years up until 1962, particularly memories of Bobby Kennedy.
She flew out of the bathroom. She'd been taking a shower. And originally, I guess she had a towel which flew out first. And then she came flying out with a certain bathrobe, white bathrobe that she always wore, terry cloth. Jumped into his arms, and they kissed passionately. And then she says, well, I guess you've met Bobby.
Evidence of Bobby Kennedy's liaison with Marilyn Monroe was confirmed by wiretaps. Those same wiretaps confirm that his brother, President John Kennedy, was also having an affair in 1962 with Marilyn Monroe. James Bacon, columnist for the Los Angeles Times, was there.
Marilyn was very frank about that. Marilyn used to tell me about Jack. She had a big affair with him, and she used to complain quite a bit, say that it was kind of a slam-bang affair because she'd be ushered in, the Secret Service would take her there to Jack Kennedy, and boom, boom, and she used to complain to me about it. She once said to me, she says, there's no foreplay. And I says, Marilyn, after all, the guy is running the country, She says, well, he says he should show more consideration.
Patricia Seton Lawford, widow of Peter Lawford, allows a winsome smile when she recalls the tales her husband told her about John Kennedy.
And he said that was Jack's bathroom, and this was the bathtub he shared with Marilyn.
And the lovemaking took place in the bath?
That's what I was told.
And it was Fred Otash, the private eye, who headed up the bugging team. He wired the home of actor Peter Lawford. Peter Lawford was married to the Kennedys' sister, Pat. It was at this home that Jack Kennedy did most of his reported playing with Marilyn. Otash heard other things on the tape much more damning than a simple sex act, like affairs of state.
When entry was made,